How did I start on TJ's War? Well, we go a long way back for that. I was 10 years old when my father died, and that's who TJ is. And I knew nothing about him. I didn't realize that I knew nothing about him until I found a photograph of him when I was 15. And here was this young man in army officer uniform escorting a Nazi through some gates with another chap in a uniform I didn't recognize. And I said to my mother, "Why have we got this? Who is this guy?" And she pointed out my father and said, "That's your dad." Didn't look anything like the man I remembered. And I realized at that point that I needed to, this to me was a signal that I needed to get going and find out who he was and find out about what this story was about. My mother knew nothing about his history during the war. So I went off and I spent roughly a week a year for the next 30 years going to places and where I could, talking to people that had worked with him. A lot of people didn't want to talk to me. A lot of people wanted to keep what they knew secret because that's what they were trained to do. But enough people saw that I was a boy or a young man, getting to be an older man, wanting to know about my father. That's all I wanted to know. I had no intention of writing a book. But then the pandemic came along and I was working abroad, and I'd either be working or been stuck in my flat under a sort of lockdown that happened much earlier than it did in the UK. And I thought, well, I've got nothing else to do. And so I started writing this book, writing everything that I knew. And the events are all there. You can actually look up a lot of the events that are in this book in things like Wikipedia and Google or whatever. You'll find them. They're not well known, but they all happened. But I really wanted more than that. I have 4 grown-up children, and I wanted them to feel a connection with their grandfather, who they never met. I didn't join the dots with straight lines, but I created curves, I think, to try and express how things came about. Because these events, people don't go off and kill each other for no reason. They go off and kill each other for very poor reasons. And trying to explain how those came about is part of that book. It's a war story. It's very much an anti-war story. And it's a love story. Because these are real people.